What's going on, guys? SMH Super Mario Hoops back with some more hoops, and today we're going to be doing our shooting guard tier list. If you remember last time we did the point guard tiers, if you remember, I'm wearing this shirt because I'm doing this on the same day as I'm going to be doing the other tiers later on, but I'm going to be uploading them probably on different days. So yeah, let's get right into this. So the tier 1 player should come to really no surprise to anybody. It's obviously Michael Jordan. He is widely considered the GOAT in the NBA community. 6 for 6 in the finals, 6 finals MVP, which is twice as many as the next most, which is, I believe, Kareem and LeBron. But yeah, 10-time scoring champion, highest point per game total of all time. Defensive player of the year once as well. Dude was just a beast, and he was probably the most competitive player of all time as well. So he's basically on the top of almost everything. So we're going to move on to tier 2. Now tier 2 was very tough to make. So I got five players at tier 2. Now the order of them should come to no surprise, but the fact that I got them all in the same tier might be a little surprising. So the first one we're going with here is Kobe Bryant. I think that's pretty obvious. He is the closest thing we've seen to Michael Jordan. He's won 5 titles, made 18 All-Star games, which is just out of this world. Won an MVP, made a bunch of defensive teams as well. And yeah, he's also won 2 finals MVPs, which I believe is more than everybody else that's on this tier. So our third player is Dwayne Wade. Now, D-Wade, I think, probably had the best run in a playoffs that I've probably ever seen in 2006, where he basically put the whole Heat team on his shoulders and just led them to a championship, which is absurd considering he had just been in the league for like 3 years. So that'd be like thinking that like Brandon Ingram or something like that, or Jaylen Brown could put a whole team on their shoulders and win a championship with like everyone else playing bad. And he averaged like over 30 a game. That was crazy. But he also has 3 titles along with the other 2 he got later in the Big 3 time. He also, I believe, has the most blocks for a shooting guard ever. So there's also that. Number 4, but also like number 4 overall, number 3 in tier 2 is Jerry West. I mean, he's not the logo for no reason. He's the only finals MVP ever on the losing team as well, and probably deserved more championships. But yeah, so this is unfortunate for him, but he was a crazy scorer, and yeah, so I had to put him number 3 on this tier. And the one right before him, I have right after him, my bad, Allen Iverson, who led his team to the finals in 2001. Probably one of the craziest teams in the finals that we've seen, because I mean the rest of that team was not really that spectacular around him, and he actually even took a game from the Lakers. So there's that, and really he was a pretty solid scorer even until like his time with the Nuggets as well, where I believe he averaged like 28 points per game one year, which is just insane as well. And the last one I got here is actually Clyde Drexler, and I was thinking about it because I mean, Clyde Drexler, no one really talks about the fact that he made the finals twice in the 90s as well, because he made it in 1990 when they lost to the Pistons, and he also made it in 1992 when they lost to the Bulls. But a lot of people talk about like Karl Malone and Stockton lost twice, how Barkley lost to the Bulls and stuff like that. And no one really brings up the Blazers teams that made the finals both those years. And Clyde Drexler, there was actual debate up until they played the Bulls in 92 like who was really like the better shooting guard and stuff like that, until obviously MJ proved it, and that's why he's tier 1 and Clyde is tier 2. But he also got a championship in 1995 when he was with the Rockets. So moving on to tier 3. Tier 3, first off, we got George Gervin, the Iceman, who led the league in scoring. He was a multiple-time All-Star and a Hall of Famer, obviously. He led the Spurs pretty far. He led them further than some of the other guys in this list. That's why I'm putting him probably the highest on tier 3, because he was just like a crazy scorer, and like the patent finger roll too. But he got to the conference finals actually, I believe, a few times. So that's pretty crazy. Next up, I got James Harden. James Harden could obviously get higher in this list by the end of it. He could be tier 2. No chance he's tier 1, I'm sorry. But he could get tier 2 by the end of it. But right now, I think he's a tier 3 point guard. Moving on to the next spot on tier 3, I got Tracy McGrady. The one thing hurting Tracy McGrady is the fact that he couldn't really go anywhere in the playoffs. The furthest playoff run he ever made was when he basically just rode the bench with the Spurs. So he didn't really do much on that run anyways. And I mean, unfortunately for him, that was the only time the Spurs have ever lost in the finals. But he was a pretty good scorer as well. He led the league in scoring when he was with Orlando. He was also pretty dominant with that Rockets team. He had pretty crazy moments like the 13 points in 35 seconds. But just the fact he also had some injury issues. But I think that makes him tier 3 and puts him a little bit lower than the other guys. And the next guy I have on here is Pete Maravich, who also led the league in scoring. Probably one of the more underrated players and unspoken players of this list. He was an All-Star, I believe, 5 times, but he was just a crazy scorer, and he did just about everything. Like, he honestly, in his prime, put up similar numbers to guys like that are higher than him on this list, like MJ or Kobe or Dwayne Wade and stuff like that. So that makes me put him at tier 3. And he was, I don't know, he was just like an insane scorer. I believe one game he even had like 69 points, 68 points or something like that. So that's just crazy. I know some of these other guys like George Gervin have done that. I think MJ's done that once. And obviously Kobe's gotten 81 points in a game. But not many people above him can even say that. And it's just unfortunate. He didn't really have the greatest team around him either when he was with like the New Orleans Jazz. But I got Pete Maravich on here. Next up is personally my favorite shooting guard, which is Manu Ginobili. Might be a little biased on here, but he contributed to 4 championships, a multiple-time All-Star, 6th Man of the Year as well, and probably got robbed of the Finals MVP in 2005. And really, I know this is an NBA list. The fact that he was able to lead a team from a different country to the gold over the U.S. when, he's basically playing against all NBA players, all NBA stars, and the rest of his team is made up of Louis Scola and just a bunch of guys that you've never even heard of. So it's just crazy the fact that he did that. Next we got Klay Thompson. I shouldn't have to say much about that. He's probably one of the top 10 shooters of all time. Just like Klay just like Curry and Draymond and stuff like that. He's won 3 titles. He's been there since the first run. And he could obviously move up on this list as well. Next up, Ray Allen, and actually I'm going to pair him with Reggie Miller. Both of them are really good shooters. Probably the second and third shooter greatest shooter of all time. Both of them could lead their team pretty far as a number one option, but couldn't really win the title. But the reason I put Ray Allen above Reggie is that he eventually got championships, which is unfortunate for Reggie. But yeah. Also, I think a prime Ray Allen is just a bit above Reggie. Yeah, had more athleticism for sure. Moving on to tier 4. This one might be hard to decipher, but Vince Carter is number 4, tier 4. I just feel like with that Raptors team back then, it's kind of hard to say that they would have done much. And I mean, people now, I feel like they're giving too much criticism to former Raptors like Vince Carter and DeMar DeRozan and Chris Bosh, because they said that they could never do what Kawhi's doing right now. But I mean, even though that's kind of true, I just think that's kind of unfair because he was still a pretty good player. He's going to be a Hall of Famer for sure, and he's been playing forever. He's going to be the longest tenured player like ever in terms of like how many seasons played. Next, Sidney Moncrief won Defensive Player of the Year awards, was an All-Star throughout like the 80s. And those Bucks teams are pretty underrated as well. So yeah, and he was a pretty good scorer. I believe he averaged 20 points per game like multiple seasons. Next, we got David Thompson, another great scorer. And he was on some pretty solid Nuggets teams. Not really much else to say, but yeah. So next on tier 4 is Joe Dumars, who was a Finals MVP, won titles with Isaiah Thomas, and yeah, he was an All-Star also throughout like some of the 80s, and he was actually on the team until like Grant Hill came along too. Next up is Brandon Roy, which is unfortunate because of injuries. He was just insane, like his athleticism, the way he could just like dunk on everybody, and he was a pretty good 3-point shooter as well. And he was making all NBA teams by like his second and third years in the league, and like people were actually thinking like who was better between like Brandon Roy or like Dwayne Wade and stuff like that. That wasn't a real topic at the time, but it's unfortunate for the injuries. Next up is Hal Greer. I can't tell you too much about him. I know he won titles with the 76ers back in the day in like the 60s, and he was a pretty good scorer, but other than that, there's not much else to say. Next, we got Gail Goodrich, who was on those Lakers teams with Jerry West. He was a pretty good scorer. He later went on to like the Suns and stuff, but yeah, he was a pretty nice scorer. Next and last on this tier is Sam Jones, who won titles in the like 50s and 60s with the Celtics. It's kind of hard to rank them so high, but when you have 10 titles, which is like second to only your teammate Bill Russell, you gotta be ranked pretty high somewhere. So I'm putting him at the end of tier 4. And now moving on to tier 5. These are just guys that really haven't, I feel like, cemented themselves as like, game-changing guys, but they've still been pretty nice players and like all-stars for sure. First up, Mitch Richmond. Mitch Richmond could get you like 25 points per game when he was on the Kings, and he was part of the Big Three, like the Run TMC with the Warriors. But he just never, his like playoff numbers didn't really compare to his regular season numbers, so that's why I have him tier 5. I also have Joe Johnson down here. Joe Johnson was pretty clutch, and he was a pretty solid player. Didn't put up the craziest numbers, but he was a part of some decent teams, never really a super team, except maybe early with his Suns days, but back then he wasn't the same Joe Johnson he was with like the Hawks or the Nets. Next up, we got DeMar DeRozan, who was a part of the Raptors like revival days, because like they had some success with Vince Carter, they sniffed the playoffs like a bit, like with Chris Bosh. They made it a few times with him, but with DeRozan, which when they finally started like winning series again, yeah. So that's why I got him at right behind Joe Johnson. Also, Joe Johnson has longevity on his side right now. When it's all said and done, DeRozan could be above him. DeRozan could be as high as tier 4, I think. So next up, this one's kind of tough, but Drazen Petrovic. He was, in my opinion, he's probably a top 5 shooter of all time, but no one's going to give him credit for that. But he was only in the league for a few years, but in that time, he became an all-star, an all-NBA player, averaged 23 points per game, was part of an important Nets team. They were just pretty good, and I think he's honestly also very underrated because his career was sadly cut short for, So next up on this list, we got Jimmy Butler, who could obviously be higher on this list, but it's all said and done, similar to DeMar DeRozan. But I mean, Jimmy Butler, he's never really been to the conference finals ever. He is a pretty good defender though, and yeah. But I think when it's all said and done, Jimmy Butler will be somewhere in tier 4, maybe roughly around where like Gail Goodrich and Hal Greer is. But yeah. Next is Rip Hamilton. I mean, he was a pretty good scorer, but he was a part of a championship team. But other than that, I don't know really. Like, he wasn't extremely good. He played defense as well, which that whole Pistons team did. But yeah, I wouldn't say he's really on a guy like Klay Thompson's level who could shoot and play defense. But yeah, so I got him there. And then lastly, we got Jeff Hornacek, who was a part of many important teams. He was a part of the Suns in the early 90s, and then he was also a part of the Jazz when they got to the finals multiple times. But he was a 20-point per game scorer when he was with the Suns, and with the Jazz, he was their second option behind Karl Malone that Stockton liked to feed to as well for like open threes and stuff. But that's going to conclude this episode, this video. If you liked it, leave a like and subscribe. If you didn't like it, tell me why in the comments, or even if you did, tell me why in the comments, or even tell me your opinions in the comments. So that's going to conclude this video. So yeah, I'm out. Peace.